Hi everyone, welcome back to another special episode of Grow Your Tutoring Business. Today we have a guest. It's been quite good actually the last few episodes to have some people on because I've done a lot of sort of solo episodes recently. So welcome to Claire.
Hello.
Claire, do you know what I really love about this is that we've met a few times in real life as well. And I feel it just changes the dynamic of
Yeah.
how we connect online even. So it's great to see you again. How you doing?
Yes. Yeah. Pretty good. And the run up to Christmas is all a bit frantic, but
Yeah, we're getting closer. And I was chatting to a parent yesterday who's also a teacher, and she was saying that, like this kind of particularly the last kind of month or so, whether you're primary or secondary,
yeah.
this like rush and how where the days go and the weeks just disappear, don't they, towards
Yeah.
Christmas. And we just get so busy. What are plans? Oh, this is totally off topic for business, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What plans have you got for Christmas? What do you get up to?
So it's family. Christmas Day, Boxing Day
Mm,
is husband's family, my family. And then we always plan the 27th as nothing.
okay.
Decompression time.
Yeah.
Obviously when the kids were younger, it was all built. This is the day you can build your Lego.
Yeah.
But now they're a bit older. So this is the day you can sit in front of the Xbox, basically.
How old are your children?
13 and 16.
Oh yeah, perfect. Yeah, perfect for Xbox time, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's great getting together with the family, and there's
Yeah.
several cousins and stuff now. So,
Right.
but I do find that now that we make that day nothing, that's just us. We'll get
Mm,
dressed if we want. Maybe we'll go for a wholesome walk.
mm.
But yeah, no, on the whole, it's decompression day.
And what
And then
happens in your tuition business, Claire? Do you stop?
yeah, last sessions is today.
Mm,
Um, and I'm sorry, I've got a cat. Yeah, I'm running outside the door.
okay.
And then I'm finished until I'm doing two sessions, like in the new year for a neighbour, just to
Right,
catch up.
okay.
The high school near us starts. They do a GCSE. No, sorry, they do an end of Key Stage 3 assessment in January, and then they start the GCSE curriculum for the year nines.
Okay.
So she messaged me. I tutored one of her older daughters, and she messaged me. She's like, "Could you just do a couple of sessions because I can't fit her in regularly." So I'm doing that, but then back to on the 6th of January proper. So
So it kind of leads into the whole like reason that we're chatting today is because we wanted to talk about like I suppose it's saying no or recognizing what you say no to in your business.
yeah,
And over Christmas is a really perfect example of what you could continue. I think most, I know, a bit conflicting here because some people will say, well, you don't do anything at Christmas. Nobody wants anything. I don't know what your experience is like of this with tutoring, but I found the opposite. I find that people will just want to just keep going no matter what.
right. Yeah.
What's your experience?
Well, when I put out the notice that, we're finishing this week, and in fact, most of my groups finished last week.
Mm,
Only the groups I'm doing this week are sort of catch-up sessions
mm,
because of an inset day or, things that didn't happen. So, because normally, like even last week, I found my students were like a bit giddy, the learning environment wasn't that
mm.
great. And they were like, why isn't it next week? And I'm like, this is why there's none next week. Will you just come down from the ceiling a little bit?
Yeah.
And then yeah, I don't really, no one said, oh no, I need sessions. And I did
Mm,
last year do a few. I can't think they went back to school a bit late again. And I
mm,
just said, I opened up my book for an ad hoc sessions.
mm.
I don't have very many one-to-ones. So when I do open up in the holidays, they do tend to get booked up quite quickly. But I've chosen not to do it this year, apart from the favour for the neighbour down the road.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? That that's the case. I find exactly the same. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
matter what the holiday is. The if I offered it, people would still come. Um,
Mm.
you put this in a much better way than me. I'm rubbish at naming things. So when you messaged me and we was talking about the whole like saying no to something, you was like making peace with what you don't want for your business, and I think that's a much better way than saying don't, just say no.
Yeah.
Um, Tell us a little bit though, Claire, about what you teach, what you tutor, how long you've been doing it for.
So I've just had the second birthday of my business. Um, I went straight from university, PGCE into teaching. Um, went through there for about 10 years, moved up quickly through management, moved to school so I could get an SLT position, and then I had children. Which doesn't sound as negative as I made it sound then.
The big sigh. Yeah.
But then everything changed, and I went into sort of more, when I went back after the children, it was part-time
Mm.
and it wasn't my thing. I wasn't getting the job satisfaction and the enjoyment. Then we moved abroad for a little while. We lived in Belgium for 3 years. And then when we came back, I started doing a little bit of supply at my son's school. And that was okay. Then COVID happened. And then I went back to doing supply. And supply after COVID was not the same as supply before COVID.
Okay.
And I just got to the point I was like, no, I don't want to do this.
Mm.
But I'd never done anything else. And then a text came from another neighbour down the road on our street WhatsApp. Does anybody know a maths tutor? And I thought, So I offered out and I said, do you know what? I've done it before. I love maths. I offered them a peanuts price so we could just try it out.
Mm.
And 2 years later, I've got 40 students a week
Wow.
in various groups, one-to-ones, others that I just see in the holidays. So it all took off. So it's all face-to-face tuition. I'm based in Surrey. I pride myself on a really practical, games, fun, colour, a little bit silliness. And that's all the positive feedback I get from my
Mm.
clients and from other tutors. I really like your style. She really enjoys it, all that sort of thing. So that's kind of my USP, I suppose. I just try to make it as creative as possible,
Mm.
and have some fun with it, because if you're not enjoying it, it's just so much of a struggle. So,
Mm.
and I just have different groups. I've got a maths club, which is 14 kids, but it's a really low cost. It's like just like an after school 45 minutes club for year 3, 4. And I do year 5, 6 groups, and I do key stage 3 and 4 at home. So it's really
Okay.
varied, and that's one of the brilliant things about it.
So you do face to face. Is this at your home or do you have a centre?
So I see one student at home, at her home.
Mm.
I have 3 days a week. I run my sessions at the local junior school. So it's the one where I used to work. So I do and where my kids went. So I do have connections with them. Um, but so I just rent the library or a classroom, depending on what session I'm running. And then
Yeah.
everything year 7 and above is around my dining table.
Excellent. Sounds amazing. So you've been going for 2 years.
Yep.
Growth sounds like it's gone really, really well.
Incredible.
I imagine like some of the or one of the reasons why you wanted to do something around this, like saying no and creating this business which we love, is because some of the lessons you've learned over the last couple of years. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, how did you learn these lessons? Is it something where you were saying yes to things you didn't like? Or was it just something you brought with you as a skill, like from teaching?
I think it's a combination, really. I think when you first start out, you're inclined just to say yes to everything because you
Yeah.
want to get people on your books, and you want to just get started, because by this, if you just get one student, you've started, and then
Mm.
you can start to learn, and word of mouth and references and all of that. But when I first started out, I was planning on doing some online tuition. And I wasn't really too keen on the idea because
Mm.
like being with the kids just lifts me. And it's what I always used to love about teaching, was that time spent with the students and the silly stories that they tell you, and the giggles and all of that. Um, and then actually my face-to-face business just took off. I live on the outskirts of Woking, so Woking's a town, but I live in like a satellite village almost, but not like a post office and a church village. It's a bit more urban. So actually, my audience and my potential client base is pretty dense.
Mm.
So it ended up that I didn't need to take on any online work in the end, which I am pleased about, because I just don't think that's in my bag or where I would fly. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
It's just not what I really wanted, but I would have done it to make power up tuition work. Um, so yeah, when people approach me and they're like, "Oh, I'm looking for online tuition," then I say, "No, that's not what I offer," um, because that's the choice I've made for myself. So right out from the start, it is a case of yes, 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 yes. And even now in my well, in my groups, if a student's not right for my group, I say no. I don't
Mm,
just take anyone in the group, um, particularly at Key Stage 4, because I don't want to have foundation kids with my higher kids, because I don't think it does the foundation kids any good in confidence. And I just don't think, for me, it doesn't gel. So learning to say no to clients is hard. It feels
mm,
wrong. But I do explain, why. I've got a call coming up next couple of days, a new year 10, and I just need to find out if that year 10 fits with my current year 10s.
mm,
Because if he doesn't, then it's just no good for anyone. And I'm not going to say yes just to increase my weekly intake. It's
mm.
got to be right and it's got to work.
Yeah.
Um, so from a general day-to-day business and clients, that's what I've said no to. But there's also, it's just a huge thing about knowing your boundaries on your hours. I've got an agency I do one student with. She's EOTAS and I work with them. But they've approached me a couple of times for more daytime clients. Now that's kind of like the holy grail for tutors, isn't it?
Mm,
Get these daytime hours. But actually I said no. Um, because I do face-to-face like 10 and a half hours a week. Um, and the other time I'm doing the planning and the admin, but I've also got other little things that I'm investigating. So um, I'm not kind of like, I need it all because I've got a family. My husband's got a demanding job, and the whole point of being in this is to make it work for our family life.
mm.
Um, so that's some of the things that I say no to.
It's really interesting to hear you talk about that whole, like, this is what it's like in terms of hours, and then I'm protecting other parts of my world because it's important, right? So we can sort of put a ring around what we do with our family and making sure they'll ring fence that time and schedule it, make sure it's kind of sacred. But also, like, with your business, when you're saying yes to something, there is the potential of saying no to something else that is really worthwhile. Like, for example, like 10 and a half hours of tutoring time is not going to sound a lot to some people. Some people are going to go, well, I do 25. And so much just depends on your business model that you choose and whether you enjoy it, those kind of things. But it's really important that you save time for the growth of your business, and whether it's investigating different things, like you said, or whether it's looking down at whether your strategy and whether, like, the things you're saying yes to is keeping you aligned with what you want. I know not everybody has a written down strategy, but everyone should have an idea about where they want to be at some
Yeah.
point, and they might already be there, and it's just about sustaining and maintaining. Is this something which you've always had that skill, Claire? Is this something that you had when you was in school as well? Or is this something that's come to the front since you started running a business?
I think it's probably something that's more come to the front since I've been running a
Mm,
business. I don't think I've ever been particularly backward in coming forward. Uh, but I think when you're in a school environment, it's much harder to say no because you're not in
mm,
control, and someone's always judging you. And if they want you to run an after school club and you just say, you end up saying
mm,
yes because you feel that you have to, or can you just do this? Can you just do that? And I think I'm master the destiny of my own time at the moment, and I
mm,
know that I want to have time in my week to do things, whether that's
mm,
work things or keep a grip on the house or
mm,
exercise, which
mm.
kind of went out the window in the last year or so, and I've really got back into keeping an eye on that. So yeah, I think it's probably something that was there, but now I'm in the environment that I can own it and I'm responsible for it. So
Having that autonomy, right? Yeah,
yeah,
it's interesting. Just going to go back to school for just like a briefest of time. Do you really believe that we don't have the control over that, or is it we're just? I mean, it might doesn't matter. It might be that the outcome's the same, but there's just that fear of saying no, isn't there, in that
yeah,
environment?
there is a fear of saying no when you're in employment of any kind, I suppose. It's not just teaching.
No, no,
If
that's
your
right.
boss asks you to do something, to say no is really difficult. And you feel like you have to have mega justification. Whereas now,
Mm.
my boss is quite nice and she understands when I say no, I don't want
Mm.
to.
Yeah, not so much of a battle, maybe. Have you ever worked with someone? You said you went straight into teaching, so be with just within teaching, I suppose. But have you ever worked with someone who was really good and had those boundaries, and people pushed back?
Um, no, I don't know that anybody
No,
particularly stands out. And I do think, and I think we see it a lot as well when we see new tutors coming into teaching, and they're in your group and they're like, well, can I do this? And well, can I do that? And it's like,
permission led.
if
Yeah,
you'd like.
yeah, yeah. We talk
This,
about this with other people, like so within like the inner circle of tutors who thrive. We often say like, well, let's look at the post. Let's look at what people are asking. What support can we give?
yeah,
And often it's looking at like that permission based living where we go, is this okay? Can I do this? And like you say, and it's like, well, it's so hard to let go of that baggage that you're bringing with you. Like whether it's because not everybody's just gone straight into teaching. Sometimes they've even had a bad experience in another job as well. So there's even
yeah.
more baggage going on.
Well, they've never taught. They're not teachers.
What? No, yeah, exactly, right. And then yeah, and it's a whole permission based thing. Looking, it's not a bad place, like as in to come and ask these questions because you'll get support, but we just want to gently go, oh, actually, we can make decisions here. This is
Yeah,
absolutely fine. I was chatting, I'm going to do a massive name drop now, so I'm going to clang this on the floor. But when I was chatting to Lee Parkinson,
yeah,
Mr. P does ICT, he says that we don't have role models within teaching anymore. So if you have an I'm going to go old school, NQT, ECT, whatever they're going to be called in the future, when they go into a workplace environment now, what they see is what you've just described, Claire.
yeah,
Management ask, and we say yes.
yeah,
You see people spending 10 hours a weekend planning, marking, getting ready for the week. So that's their role model. And these people who used to have really solid boundaries, who used to say no, they're not there anymore. Or they are, but they're not going to be there much longer because the
yeah,
powers that be are going to get rid of them in one way or another using some sort of strategy.
yeah. But
And
even
that's
in, like when
difficult.
they do the year groups, when your head teacher comes to you and is like, all right, I want you in year six next year,
Mm.
and you're just like, yeah, okay, but you just don't feel like you can say, actually, do you know what? I don't think that's the role for me, and this is why.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I've worked for several different head teachers, and they're all head teachers for a reason, and some are better than others. But I've definitely seen more that I would just feel like actually saying no is the kiss of death on my career at this school. The
Mm.
relationships would go, and that's just the position that I would be in. It's just too difficult.
I think the wider issue, and I said this would be brief, so we will move on after this. I promise that the wider issue, and this is something which is still worth bearing thinking about as a business owner, because the pressures can come from all sorts of places, even as an independent tutor or self-employed person, because we do have our external pressures, no matter what we think about, whether it's our mortgage or the rent, the car payments, or there will still be outside pressures, or even just the fact that you
University
might.
fund.
Well, yeah. But even to the point where like we say we're not answerable to anybody, and I suppose we're not, but we still got to make sure we look after our clients, and we might get um a client that we've said yes to that we should have said no to,
Yeah.
that has then kind of always putting us off of out of sorts because we're
Mhm.
it's bringing up anxiety, or just being feeling a little bit nervous about working with that person on an ongoing basis. But I think that within teaching and possibly within other workplaces too, I think teaching's a little bit unique in this whole Ofsted thing. Like,
Yeah.
not, I know there are governing bodies around other industries, but often they are a supportive factor.
Yeah.
And I think Ofsted is not a supportive factor. They come in and they pick and they moan and they say, do this and do this. And then there's like this whole grading system
Yeah.
that's not really fit for purpose. And so what we're creating is a leadership team, or within academies that might be called something else, but some kind of management level of management that are so fearful of that
Yeah.
that they can't see people for people, the human resources. They're not human resources, they're just pieces of data that then feeds into the children. And it's just like this horrible spiral of rubbish
Yeah.
And then the people who actually rise to the top are the ones who have the thickest of skin, who don't care. That might be harsh, or have forgotten how to care, is what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who lead and then get promoted. And I find that in a school system, I find it abhorrent. I've worked for a few people. I've gone, I don't know how you got where you've got to, because you just, for want of not being very rude to someone, just cold,
Yeah.
very cold.
Yeah.
And
The worst head teacher I ever worked for, who was like the most demoralizing guy. That's not against him. He was just his
mm,
personality. But he then, I looked him up years later, and he'd gone opened up some sort of consultancy
mm.
that was about boosting morale and confidence. And I was like, are you kidding?
Yeah, no idea about that. That's
You know,
crazy, isn't it?
you made nearly every female member of your staff cry
Mm,
on a one-to-one basis in your office,
mm.
and you've this is what you've gone into. But anyway,
Yeah,
well,
but
I don't
that
know
in
whether I should have
itself
said
is
that or not.
fascinating, isn't
No,
it?
no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that it's this baggage, I think, and this is
Yeah.
why this topic is so important. So tell us a little bit about your journey with saying no, and share that experience of saying yes to things that perhaps wasn't aligned with your business. I've got plenty of these stories, so I will chip in, Claire, along the way, I'm sure.
So I've got three other standout no's for me.
Mm,
So the first one this year was I thought I'd do SATs marking, because I've not done it before, and I work with Key Stage 2, and I thought it's almost like CPD.
yeah.
So I didn't do it for the money. I did it for because you can't because it's terrible. Um, but I did it to learn, and so I did all the training and did all the like qualifying tests that you have to do, and I got through that, and I started doing the SATs marking, and oh my word, it was like the most life-sucking thing I have ever experienced in my entire life. And the system didn't work properly. Sometimes you'd log in, there was nothing to mark, but you still had these deadlines and you still had these quotas of marking to do. And my supervisor, contact the supervisor, and he either wouldn't come back very quickly, and I just got to the point where I sort of factored in my diary marking time, and I'd log in and there was none there. And I was finding it so stressful. And in the end, I just said, I'm not carrying on. I just stopped and I said, no, I'm not doing any more. I'll get paid for what I've done. I didn't finish my quota. But I felt so much better.
Mm,
The minute I made that mental decision of like, nah, stop. This is not doing me any good. I don't need it. Kind of
yeah.
done the learning that I wanted to do, and I don't need to be spending another amount of time marking. I think it was 27,000 question responses was my quota. Um, I think I probably did about three quarters before I was like, no, 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 no.
Wow, you did actually do quite a bit.
I did, yeah, I did quite a lot. And because I'm a math specialist, I was on the next grade up where you get the more complicated questions. But there was one day and I sat and I worked. I think I worked for about an hour, maybe more, and it worked out at about £10 an hour, less tax. And I
Wow.
wasn't slow. So it was just that was a case of like, you know what, this isn't serving me. I've done what I need to do with this. And I rested my supervisor. I was like, what happens if I just stop? And he was like, well, you just stop. I was like, okay then. Um,
Mm.
and it's not something I would do again. And so that's something I've definitely learned. I can say no to that. This is
Do you,
making me
it,
stressed and ill and unhappy.
I don't want to take away the kind of surprise here, but is there like a common theme with the things that you say no to in terms of the way that you feel?
Yes and no. So my other two no's are things that I haven't said no to because they've never happened, but I know that they were future options that I've kind of mentally said no to now because I know it's not what I want. But
Okay.
yeah, sometimes some of the things I say no to is because I've just learned that I don't need to feel like that.
Mm,
I don't have to feel like that, and I don't want to feel like that. So There's a whole range of reasons to say no. They make you feel bad, they make you uneasy. Um, and just choice. I just don't want to. So,
Mm. There's
um,
this element of like listening to like your body, isn't there? And
yeah,
like what's going on. I think if you're fresh out of teaching, this will feel weird because I don't think we do listen to our bodies. You can't listen to your bodies when you're a teacher because if you did, you wouldn't go in.
yeah,
You'd say no to a too much. You probably wouldn't be able to like get through the day. Or that's my experience anyway.
yeah.
Um, I think in business that take for me it's taken a lot of practice. It sounds like you've got there quite quickly. Why
Mhm.
do you think you've got there quite quickly? I'm jealous actually.
I think some of it is because this isn't our main income.
Mm,
So I don't have that pressure.
okay.
Um, but also, um, I don't know. I think I'm probably just, can be a bit bolshy.
But that was what was going to take me towards my next question. Is this like a personality thing, do you think?
I think so. I think that, everybody's different and I don't go gunning for a row, but I wouldn't shy away from conflict. You know what I mean? Sometimes I
Mm,
feel that things need saying, and sometimes I make those choices to say what I feel
yeah.
needs. And okay, sometimes I then have to go back and apologize, which I think we've had a conversation in the past similar.
Mm,
So yeah, I think it is personality, and not everybody, we're not all the same, thank goodness.
mm,
We've all got ways, and that's why I think, and I notice this in the tutoring community, how many cheerleaders there are. And when
mm,
someone comes in and says, I'm really struggling with this, or I wasn't sure how to word this, or I've had this message, there are enough people in our computers to say,
mm,
do you know what, you could do this, or no, you handled that great. And I've got WhatsApp messages groups with some other tutors, and someone messages, I don't know how to say no to this, or I've had a really bad day, and we can cheerlead them because some of us are more chilled with ourselves and some of
I
us
think
aren't.
sometimes it's articulation. Again, my own personal lived experiences. There are times when I want to just say no, and then I
Mm,
articulate it in not the best way
yeah,
because there's other stuff wrapped up in it,
yeah,
and and then it doesn't go wrong. It's never like to the point where it's like horrible, but I always look back and go, oh, I could have just done that slightly
yeah.
differently, and then yeah, I find that really tough. And so that kind of support where someone is like really chilled with themselves or they've been through it before, they're just really good at this stuff. Say, well, this is what I would say, or this is what I would send. Yeah. And
It's
then
age as well. I'm
yeah,
of a certain age now where I'm not so concerned with what people think of me.
no, no. Okay. That because that's something which I think a lot of people struggle with, where we're well that we know what's right for us and we know what's right for the business, and that's we can be really clear with those things. But if we're still worried about us saying this thing or behaving in a particular way because someone might think badly of us, or
Yeah.
it can be a huge barrier, can't it? How do you? I mean, I'm terrible for that. So how do you switch that off? Do you think? Oh, is this something that we could learn?
Um, I don't know. So I have I
Well,
have
I
this
hope so.
advantage that so this year I got diagnosed with ADHD,
Right.
which is something I've been battling with for about 4 or 5 years, and I feel that
Mm,
that has also helps me a bit more understanding about myself,
mm,
but it also kind of makes me I've just got some things that I don't let worry me because I just don't have the headspace for it.
mm,
And someone might say to me, "Oh, but do you think they think that?" I'm like, I can't worry about
mm,
what they think. If they think that and they don't want to talk to me, then that's okay. And I also think, that I've also had this year, I lost a really dear friend at the start of the year. And so that whole life's too short.
mm.
One of my oldest school friends, I lost her to cancer in January,
Oh,
and it shouldn't happen. And life's too short to do the things you don't want to do. And she spent her last year really doing the things that they went on holiday. She wanted to swim with dolphins. She went and did it, and she get a bit emotional now. but
Mm.
she, really saw her just, and she was also one of these people. It's just like, she was real. I was born in Lewisham, Southeast London, and we grew up together. And she was very much, whatever you think of me, that's fine. She was
Mm.
the nicest person. She just radiated people, and I think I learned a lot from her. And yeah, to this last year, seeing, life's too short, and you just got to. I'm waffling now. I've lost my track because I got a bit emotional.
I
Um,
think the experience, Claire, of
yeah,
that is one harsh, right? Because it's
yeah,
just like you say, it just shouldn't happen.
yeah,
But then you're left with that feeling of like, I'm quite more, I am openly morbid about stuff like this because we just don't know what's going to happen. And we've got to live our life with that in mind. And we, I see my life between the age of 20 and 36 of doing some 36, yeah, 20 and 36, doing some amazing things, amazing experience, but also going through with with the handbrake on almost, because I was thinking, well, I've got to go and do this now, and then I've got to go and do this because that's the natural thing of what we do. And I think had I lent into a little bit more of that passion of, I want to have autonomy. And if I start now, I could do X, Y, Z. It doesn't matter what it is. I had the idea of business a long, long time ago, but it could have been anything. It didn't have to be tuition. Um, I'd be that far further ahead. I would have
yeah,
done something slightly different. I probably wouldn't have gone down this path. I would have done something slightly different. Maybe
yeah.
learn in another industry first. I don't know.
Mm,
I think having that experience, as harsh as it is, we can all learn from it.
yeah,
And if someone said to you, you do have 6 months left, what would you do over the next 6 months of your
yeah,
life? You would
exactly.
bloody choose the things that you love to do. You would
Good.
ditch all
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
crap that you don't like. And there's
yeah,
no reason why we just can't live like that anyway, to a point,
yeah,
because we still need to make sure that the university fund is getting topped up and that the car gets fixed, and all, but we shouldn't get bogged down with the day-to-day stuff in as a consequence of us trying to live like this kind of dream life, or at least aspiring to it. So I do really resonate with that, and that's one such a sad story,
mm,
and things to, and it's not just a story, it's a whole life, and people are left behind. And if there's one thing that you can take from it is like, well, I'm going to live life of
yeah,
my own accord in the way that I want, and I'm not going to
yeah.
care about if someone thinks I'm doing the wrong thing or I'm going to upset someone. Yeah, we don't want to go around upsetting people for the sake of it, but not as a consequence to my own happiness. Then
No,
it's
and
okay.
that's the thing, and it is about, when people come onto the groups and they're like, oh, well, I don't really want to do this, and just don't do it.
Mm,
Something else will come along, or you could use that time. Like I've said no to things because I want to use that time
mm,
for something else.
yeah.
And it is about boundaries. I don't, like I could fit on tutoring on a Friday. I don't want to, so I
Mm,
don't. All my tutoring is Monday to Thursday. I work on Fridays, usually doing some admin or some catch up or whatever, but I don't tutor.
mm,
And so therefore, if I don't get that work done, it doesn't matter. But if I was tutoring, it would have to happen. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
So it's just having the boundaries, and I think that's what it all comes down to, knowing what you really want, and knowing what you have to have, and just, yeah,
mm,
laying it out and planning for it. And I don't want to work over Christmas, so I make sure that my pricing scales out
amen.
over the year.
Yeah.
Or, I don't want to work over the summer. I took most of the summer off. I think I did a few sessions in September before they went back, like back to school ad hoc sessions. But I factored that and I planned it so that when I could say no,
Mm,
nothing's happening in the summer. We went on an amazing trip to Canada, um, and I just didn't worry about it.
mm.
So
A lot of lessons there, and again, more things that we could unpick. I think the whole planning thing is really like critical to being
mm,
able to understand what you would say yes to and what you would say no to. So
yeah,
when this is always my message, because this is what I do. I look at my strategy and I go, right, if I say yes to this, is this going to help me go to where I want to go? If the answer is yes, then it's like, right, how is it going to impact? But then it takes me through, like, maybe then going back and negotiating with that particular service or thing I want to do, or sometimes it's just negotiating with myself
Yeah,
and saying, is this something that's really going to impact? If
yeah,
it's not, or it's not going to help in any way, I'm not going to put any energy towards it, because why would I?
yeah,
And that's that switch. I did this. I learned the hard way when I was trying to switch initially from one to groups, and I was kind of going, I'll do a little bit of both. And
yeah,
I just couldn't make that work. And I know other people do. I'm in a place now where I can, but the groups are really well established now because I've been doing it for a few years. But so when I really was like, well, I need groups to work, what do I need to do? Well, I need to stop saying yes to one-to-ones.
yes,
That was the only way that in my mind at that point, I could get it to work. So I stopped advertising one-to-ones. If someone asked a one-to-one, it was like, no, I'm not doing it. And over time, I'm not going to pretend it wasn't scary or there was a pain point at the beginning, because there was. It grew, and it was, and eventually it was fine. Financially, it was okay anyway.
yeah,
it's okay.
yeah.
And
No, I
then by
think
the end of that year, it was fine.
you just have to hold your nerve at some points to know what it is that you want. So I've got a year five group, and I know
Mm,
that that year five group is a slow burner.
mm,
So the last two, it's in half termy blocks, and the last two half terms, I've run it. It's a group of six. I've run it with two children in it. So actually, my hourly rate for that, once I've paid my rent on the room at school, isn't great. But I know from my patterns that the year fives usually move into the year six group. And then actually, my year six group from last year asked me to start a year seven group, which I could
mm,
do. Um, but also, even though that group is technically running at a little bit of a loss, like not my target window, overall, in the big picture of the week, my hourly rate is higher than it's ever been,
yeah.
like on an average for the hours that I do. So I think that you do have to look at the bigger, and it's
Mm,
I can sort of equate it a little bit to, so when my kids were really tiny, when you've got your kids are small and they have a day where they just don't eat much and you kind of panic. And then I remember a health visitor or something saying, no, you've got to look at the week, what they're eating over the week. And it's
mm,
like, actually, that's true. When you think about it, not at that moment, but the
mm.
whole
Zoom
thing,
out.
you zoom out, that's the right
Mm,
expression, then yeah, you can make peace of it. And then what have I done? Today I've taken another year five into the group. And I know that usually by the end of the year it's full, um, ready for them to move into year six with me. And so they're feeding up. But yeah, so and when I've spoken to other tutors who are like, oh, I want to start groups and I don't really know, I'm like, you've got to ring fence that time. If that time is for that
mm,
group, don't give it away.
mm.
Don't have someone coming to you one to one and saying, I need one to one, but I only want one to one. And it's not easy to scale up
No.
into groups. A lot of what I've done has been a little bit of luck and connection. But when I'm strict about it and I say this, if you want help, great. This is the only way I can help you.
Mm,
Um, so, I've got one, excluding the homemade, I've got one-to-one session. And that is only one-to-one because she started with me on one-to-one right at the beginning. Um, and I've offered them a group a couple of times. They don't want it, and that's absolutely fine. Um, so I've kept her on those terms. And that one-to-one slot is booked up for the next 3 years because once this student finishes in year 11, I've got another client, previous client, who's got a younger sibling who wouldn't work in a group situation. It's just not what she needs. And so she was like, well, can I slide her in there? So that's what I've done. But I don't open up any other one-to-ones apart from holiday ad hoc. I just
mm.
say, no.
Yeah. That's cool, Claire. Thank you. Like it's always a great eye opener when you listen to somebody else who's going through this, and you've obviously set some really clear boundaries, which lots of people could learn from. If
Can I just
you,
squeak in though? Because
yeah,
one thing I quickly wanted to say as well was um, one thing about saying no as well is about not thinking about what you don't want. And this is a key as well, because a lot of things I said no to are things that I've made me feel bad. But when we had the TTA conference and we went to the extra day on the Friday, and I was in that room with all those business leaders, and we had the discussion then that there were very few independent tutors in there.
mm,
So there was a lot of business chat. And that made it very clear to me that that is not the route I want to take my business. I don't want to, people say to me, oh, you can take on other tutors. And I very much that day, that Friday with the TTA, really hit home to me. I don't want that. And I
Mm,
don't want the international tuition. And you talked at the London thing about,
mm.
your experience in China and what you learnt from it, but are you going to take it in that direction or are you going to use it more
Yeah.
in England, And it's just a case of, you did that experience. Whereas, yeah, I think listening to all those businesses in that room that day was just, and that made me feel peace. And that's where I really came with the making peace with, because we're always
Mm.
thinking, gotta grow, gotta grow. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And actually, sometimes it's like, I'm okay.
I'm 100% behind that. 100%. And it's we have to let the experiences guide us,
Mhm.
but not take us down the path we don't want to go.
Yeah,
Because you might make a decision that you think is right because it's almost like I was saying at the beginning, it also feels like a rite of passage. You go, well, I've grown to this point and now I must do this, and then I'll do
yeah,
that, and then I must get tutors on board. And you don't have to do unless there's a real purpose behind it, like as in because you don't want to do something, or it's about buying back your time, or it's about whatever it may be. But you've got to be really clear. I mean, I won't share it on here because it'd be another probably a whole podcast on that. But there is something about being guided by those experiences and then
yeah.
getting that clarity about what it means for you. And I'm really pleased that you had that experience with the TTA in that space, because there's that's called that was a leadership day, right?
Yeah.
And there are different types of leaders. There's people who are the agency leaders and they'll lead for themselves and for the other agencies, or whether it's employment or not. But we do need independent tutors in that space,
We really do.
shouting and singing these sorts of things, because they'll listen to what you say because you're taking yourself and having those experiences and learning from them. When you go and share about it, people go, oh, okay, I thought it was just natural for me to feel nervous about this next stage,
Yeah,
or feel like I don't want to do it, but it's just what I think I have to do. It doesn't have
yeah.
to be like that at all. So I'm
No.
really, really glad you've had that experience.
Yeah, yeah, no, and because we're and I've had parents say to me as well, why don't you take on other tutors so you can do this
Mm,
bit there? Or, when my husband initially was like, well, then you can grow to there. And then I said, no, it's actually that's going to take time that I don't want to give it.
mm,
And I don't want it to grow out of control for the
mm,
time so that it then takes over our life.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, listening to that conversation about safer recruitment and
Mm.
all the different things. It's like, no, thank you. No, thank you. I safe recruited myself, and that will do.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots, isn't there,
Yeah,
that you'd have to go through without a doubt. And for some, it's fine because they get excited about it and it's part of
yeah.
where they want to go. And there'll be plenty of people wanting to do that. But I also know there's hundreds of people who don't want that at all and
No,
might be feeling nervous about the growth, and it's
yeah.
fine.
And like you say, leadership is very different. I'm an independent tutor, but I'm definitely can feel my position in. I know that other tutors that are following me
Mm,
from a point of view of how I like to teach. I get messages about, oh, I liked how you use that resource. Have you got any ideas for that? How can I do my groups? So I am a leader, but I'm not running a business, tuition business, and being a leader like that, which I think is what the Friday thing was probably a bit more about. But it was really valuable for me to stay and connect
mm,
with people like you. And, we
mm,
had our tiny little picture of independent tutors, and just to listen to what that next bit could be for me, and then just
mm.
actually say, no, thanks, but no, that's not what I want.
Yeah, it's an
Um,
it's an interesting space. The tuition industry is a very interesting space at the moment, without a doubt. It's very much being professionalized. I think we're all playing a part in that. And like any professional kind of industry, there will always be different ways of working within it. And we can champion everything
yeah.
without a doubt within the TTA, but also like champion what we offer and the way that we offer it. And I think you do that, Claire. You do that in a really lovely way. So it's always great to connect with you. This is an open invite, so it's on the podcast now, so it's a real thing. We've got a couple of speakers turning up and doing some stuff within our live event. So at some point, come and do this in the live event. It'd be really good to have you stand in front and talk about this kind of stuff, because I know there'll be independent tutors are coming to those meetups, so it'd be really good. Claire, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.